And we are live. Welcome, everybody. We are doing the bonus coverage of episode 277. This is the part where we're going to go ahead and record the ABN live ad that goes in the middle of the podcast. And we're going to cover the prepper segment. Gary and I are here. We, of course, are recording live at ABN Army Surplus in Sioux Falls. And we will be getting started here with the live ad. So make sure my recorder is ready to go. And it is. So you ready, Gary?
I am. Let's go.
All right.
Just do it. Or is that saying taken already?
Something like that. Something like that. Well, we're here at ABN Army Surplus, where we record live every Sunday. And Gary, what's new with the store? What you got any specials going on? What's going on?
Oh, I got a couple of things that are a little bit new. I know that we were out of Israeli gas masks for a while.
Yeah,
they are very hard to find in this country. There aren't many left for sale anyplace. And we did manage to get our hands on 15 of them, which are headed in the door. So probably by about Tuesday or Wednesday, when this episode comes out, I'll have 15. How long I'll have 15 is a toss of the coin. They usually go pretty quickly.
Sure.
But that's one of the new items that we've got in. We haven't had in for a while. And also we have for order, both of our bulletproof vests are in now. Both of our tactical bulletproof vests, the conceal vest and without plates in it. And then the actual tactical vest, the big heavy sucker you leave in the trunk of your car. We've got both those in. And people have been taking a look at them here in the last week as we've had them on display. And one of the things that everybody's commented about to us is how much less we are than everybody else. But those are two items that I have next to no margin in. I really don't increase the price of them to like website prices and stuff like that because they're kind of my loss leader. My hope is that if you want a bulletproof vest and you happen to be a podcast listener or something and I can order it and mail it to you, I'm not looking for a big markup on it or a big profit on it, but I'm hoping you're going to come back and you're going to get your Chew Spec pants from me and your original SWAT boots from me and your winter coats from me. That's kind of the hope that goes along with that. So both of those are priced really, really well. All you need to do is send me an email or call the store and ask us about them. So I get the gas mask. And then the other thing I really want to let everybody know is that Wise Food is literally selling off the shelf all over the country. And yeah, if you're looking for long-term food supplies, we'd love to be the place that you get them from. I cannot promise those types of deliveries we've had in the past or it was instant because we don't know what's going to happen here in the next couple of months, as you and I are going to discuss a little later. Because of the Ebola incident and the scares that have been associated with that, long-term food and preparation food supplies have been selling off the shelf. So, again, if you decide you want something like that, send me an email. Give me a call in the store. We'll see what we can do for you. I'm going to put an order in tomorrow on Monday the 19th. And I know that I'm going to be able to supply that order. However, what happens after the 19th, we don't know. They're talking about maybe even to next year before we can get the next order. So those folks who want some, contact me as soon as you can, and we'll put you on the list to see what we can do.
So if they want to contact you, they want to maybe get some Wise Food, or they want to talk to you about some of the bullet-resistant vests, how do they do that?
Send me an email at gary@abntactical.com. That's one way. The other way is to call the store phone, 605-357-8855.
Awesome. Right at 3 minutes. Awesome.
Okay,
and then we're going to go ahead and go for the prepper segment. Looking for 15 minutes if we can do it.
Okay.
Hey, and welcome back. This is our prepper segment. This is the third in our series of prepper segments. We're, of course, with Gary here at ABN Army Surplus. We record these separately on YouTube. They come out in the middle of the podcast, but if you're looking on YouTube, we're going to record these separately. But, Gary, this week, we're going to go a little bit topical, man. The big news all around the world, really, has been Ebola. And one thing, what I think when I think of Ebola is personal protective equipment, because there was a there was a big thing. There was a picture of the second nurse came down with Ebola.
Mm-hmm.
And she was getting on a plane, and you see people
Mm-hmm.
with spacesuits all around her,
Mm-hmm.
except for you seen one guy there carrying a
That's
clipboard.
it. Carrying a clipboard, no protective equipment.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit, but when I first came in before we started setting up today, what people want to buy for personal protective equipment might not be the best thing for them to buy for personal protective equipment.
Generally speaking, most of the seriously communicable diseases, if they're not airborne, like Ebola, requires you to have contact with the Ebola strain in order to be able to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is once it starts spreading within a community is that because of its incubation period, you don't know if somebody picked it up who then went to school and your kid went to school and they got it and they brought it home and all of a sudden 21 days later you have a lot of sick people. But generally speaking, you don't need to have a lot of the equipment that you see either on TV, like the spacesuits, or you hear about the people who are doing the panic and saying, you need to have full chemical suits and the rest of that kind of stuff on your day-to-day life, because Ebola as a communicable disease is not going to affect you if you don't come into contact with somebody who has it. Okay. So a gas mask, for example, is not going to protect you any better than a surgical mask that's designed to be fluid resistant, okay, like a doctor or nurse wears inside of an operating room. And those are easy. We sell them here, for example, for $1. Okay?
Right.
And I got a lot of them. Now, if somebody comes in and says, well, I'm worried about Ebola, so I want to buy a gas mask. And I do explain to them the situation. Well, you got gas mask, but it's not necessarily going to do what you want it to do if this is the only reason that you're purchasing it. Now, a gas mask might not be a bad idea as a prepper to have that anyway for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the way you choose to go, but that is not something you have to have in order to be able to prevent yourself from getting Ebola, even in a situation like we talked about on the plane. Watching that guy with the clipboard and not having a protective suit around, what I noticed was he did keep his distance. He didn't touch the patient at all.
Right.
So in theory, I don't know that I personally would have taken the chance, but in theory, he was far enough removed for the instance without touching the patient, without touching any of the body fluids of the patient, without touching the ambulance he was transported in, that there's a zero really, or whatever percentage you're
So
going to put
small that effectively it is zero. Yeah.
Yep. That he would get it. Again, I don't know that it made common sense, but nonetheless, that aside, he didn't do anything from his position that was necessarily wrong, or anything that we would have to be worried about, like we're walking, on our normal job or our normal school or our normal whatever situations. Much of the reaction we're seeing in the country right now, and this happens with many communicable diseases, it's an overreaction. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a fear, in part because regardless of how often something is explained to you by somebody who's lied to you before, you're not as likely to believe them when they're telling you the truth. And we all know that our political landscape, really going back 20 or 30 years, we've had some falling down as to whether or not we're trusting Congress and what they say, with the president or what they say, or so forth and so on. So there's a natural inclination by a large community to look at it and go, well, I'm not so sure they're telling me the truth.
Right.
So when it comes to prepping for medical issues in general, like communicable diseases, it really is a good idea to have on hand latex gloves. It's a good idea to have surgical masks. It's a good idea to be able to have cleansing type items that come in a major first aid kit. Rubbing alcohol and betadine and those types of things are a good idea in general to put together for a good prepper kit. And anytime you're dealing with a communicable disease, because in this country, a lot more people die from flu every year than you're going to see die from Ebola here.
Mm-hmm.
So all those kinds of things in a prepper kit are a really, really good idea.
So let me ask this: if now then supposedly a gas mask would work to stop the airborne infection,
Yes.
and possibly even better than a surgical mask. What if somebody were, if you were, what would Gary say? Who does need a gas mask? What are gas masks good for? For example, the Israeli
Sure.
gas masks you got coming.
Um, in a situation, and I always try to explain to people when we're teaching our classes the difference between a military operation and a civilian preparation. And the difference is twofold. The gas masks, like the Israeli gas masks and the Russian gas masks we have here, as well as the U.S. military ones when we get them, and the chem suits, are designed for people who are going to have to function in a combat situation or function in a communicable disease situation, like the spacesuits we saw. Those are for people who have to do that. For the rest of us, when we purchase those items to have in our prepper kits, it's to put it on and get the hell out of the area. It's a safety valve. A gas mask would be good if we knew that, for example, there had been some kind of a biological or chemical attack. And because we're in the upper Midwest, I'll use Omaha as an example. And we knew that it was spreading as a cloud. And we wanted to package up our family and get them out of there. You would put the stuff on them, package them up, put them in the car, and then get out of the area. That's what this equipment is for. It's to give you the option of being able to move out of the area. It's not designed for you to say, I'm going to honker down here. I'm going to wait it out. I'm going to fight it with a gas mask and a chem suit. I'm going to survive this thing. Because if you're in the middle of a nuclear attack or you're in the middle of a biological or chemical attack and it happens right in your neighborhood, sadly, even with those supplies, you're probably, not in the best situation. The supplies will most certainly help you better than the people who don't. For example, a small tactical nuclear explosion that has some radiation fallout, there are going to be some people who aren't covered at all because they don't have a gas mask and they don't have a chemical suit or something like that, who are going to have long-term cancer effects. You may reduce those effects by being able to have those supplies handy and be in a situation where you can put them on in time for it to make an effective difference. So gas masks, excuse me, are good for those situations for civilians, basically to help them be able to say, okay, an incident's happened. Let me put my gear on, get in the car, and get out of the incident zone.
I would think just for hunkering down, it would be rather impractical, simply because you got to eat.
Yep.
At some point, you're going to need to drink something.
Yep.
A gas mask covers the entire face.
Yep.
And you're not going to be able to. This is what these, and even surgical masks are more for mobility, getting, like you said, getting out or getting out of the immediate area.
Yep.
into a safer environment.
Right. And that's really the key. When we talk about a practical use of prepping, as you and I have discussed, you don't need a $500,000 bunker. God bless the TV show, but you just don't need a $500,000 bunker. That's the idea. What are you prepping for? The most common, most likely, the electrical failure, the tornado, even if it's a massive economic collapse, those kinds of things, the supplies there are designed to help you get to a safer environment. Whether or not it happens to be out of the city to your mom and dad's ranch. And if you're stuck having to hunker down and protect something somewhere, maybe of assistance. But I can tell you, trying to ward off hordes of people wanting to break in your house to steal your food from you with a gas mask and a chem suit on, even well-trained people trying to fire their own assault weapon or their own pistol or their own shotgun with that stuff on. You and I talk about it on the podcast all the time, training, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know that have actually put a gas mask and a chem suit on and then gone to the range and seen whether or not they could even fight the shotgun? Right, exactly. So it's designed mostly to say, I've got a situation here that's bad enough for me to put this stuff on, i.e., get the hell out of the area. That's what it's good for.
Very, very cool. And this is going to be releasing on Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. You are going to be holding, now this is every third Wednesday,
Right.
right?
Yep. Starting this Wednesday, every third Wednesday, all the way through the winter, and we'll see about next summer. We are going to have our emergency and disaster preparations 101 class here at the store. Yep.
And we're going to be looking at, hopefully, we did some quick back of the envelope calculations as far as schedules. We're hoping maybe in February we can get one of those broadcast on YouTube, like we are broadcasting these.
Yep.
But we're not gonna promise anything until the time comes closer. What are you be covering in that first one?
The first one we're going to cover is, when I say basic 101, we're talking about the overall picture of emergency and disaster preparation. For example, what kinds of documents should you have a second copy of, and where should you store them? What kinds of kits should you have for kids if you've got kids in your family, or pets if you have pets in your family? You and I talked in one of the earlier episodes that broadcast about the different kinds of bug out bags.
Right.
I'm going to go in a little bit more detail with the folks about the different kinds, because not everybody needs the same kind of bug out bag. Depending upon what their plans are, they don't need the same thing in a bug out bag. So we're going to talk about how to use some of the items that are the most common, what are the most common kind of items, and then everything from what can you do about your car that makes sense. You realize that we know a lot of preppers that don't even think about this simple thing. If the electric grid goes out and you don't have any fuel in your car, how are you going to get fuel in your car? Because the pumps are out. So we teach a class that says if you're a serious prepper, you keep your tank half full all the time.
Yep.
And you get used to keeping it half full all the time. The ice storm here in Sioux Falls took out a lot of power in almost the entire city of Sioux Falls for a little while, and parts of it for 2 weeks. The gas stations are shut down. And I can remember going to the tornado when I did the tornado down in Birmingham, Alabama 2 years ago. The biggest thing, no convenience stores, no place to get a cold bottle of milk or a cold soda pop or fill your car up in neighborhood after neighborhood, because the tree damage, not even the house damage, but the tree damage took down so much power over such a large area of the city, and it took so long to restore that, that getting fuel to do anything with their cars was almost impossible. The Hurricane Sandy, you may all remember seeing the long lines out of Hurricane Sandy and the even odd days, and FEMA actually had to truck fuel in to be able to get to the emergency crews working. And the reason for that was the electrical power failure took out the main electrical plant on the island that provided power to the gas stations.
Going back to Katrina and Rita, and Susan can speak to this specifically, is that there was very nearly a nationwide fuel shortage, because there was a very, very tenuous fuel supply when Katrina interrupted it. Rita damn near wiped it out totally.
That's right, because Louisiana is one of the main ports for importing fuel. That is a huge economic system there at New Orleans, where much of what we deal with that comes in from other countries comes in to that port, in particular fuel. It was a real big issue. Yep.
So if somebody comes to this class this coming Wednesday, or the third Wednesday of any month, at least through the wintertime, how long would they expect that class to last? You're going to start that. The store closes down at 7 Central Time. You start the class right thereafter,
well,
right?
Pretty shortly thereafter. It takes us about 15 minutes to sort of run the store. So we're telling folks, come on in around 7:15. We'll start the class right around 7:30. And we're going to have coffee and cookies and all that kind of stuff. The class is free, of course. And we're also going to allow people somewhere in the course of the class to be able to taste what long-term food supply from Wise tastes like, as an example. But classes can go anywhere from an hour to there have been a few we've had here that have gone to 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
It has to do with how many questions people have got afterwards. So let's say the main crux is in and done by 9:30, 2 hours.
Okay.
But what oftentimes happens is people are pretty interested in it. And if we've got 20 or 30 people, there may be 5, 6, 8, 10 that stay around and say, okay, we got this question, we got that question, and we go over things. And of course, we got our fire pit out here, as you know, and back. So there's been a couple times when we've gone out there, started a fire, and just kept the questions and the comments and the conversation going. sharing ideas amongst the community as well. You know, the people who come to the class aren't necessarily always dead beginners who don't know anything. Some of them are already in the prepping mode, and they get a chance to share their thoughts as well. But generally, an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then with questions and everything else, as long as they want to stay and chat about it, they're looking for information, we'll stay and provide it.
Very cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it for this segment this week. And we were going to be talking car preparations this week. I think we're just going to push that off to next week, unless, again, something in the news.
Something news that comes up.
Yeah. So, but hang on, everybody. We've got our DGU segment coming up right after this. Awesome.
Good.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you. We got a viewer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I didn't promote it. I just started it. So whoever you are, thanks for watching. Come join us again next weekend.
Yeah, send me an email at gary@abntactical.com with your name and your email address. I'll add you to my database.
There you go. Catch us next weekend. Thanks.